giving a little introduction and just right there in that space of starting to share vulnerably. That's so much of the foundation of our experience of trauma becoming actually an amazing catalyst for us to heal, for us to transform our lives, for us to go deeper into our connections and our relationships, for it to become a blessing instead of a curse, which I know for a lot of my life, it's felt like a curse. The condition, the trauma, whatever it is that I'm going through has really felt like such a burden. And so that's kind of what our agenda is for today. And super grateful to be with you, Yamuna.
Thank you. Yeah. Were you going to guide us in some breathing, or you already did that? I missed the first.
I kind of did that, yeah. As folks were coming in the first few minutes, just a simple little meditation, and I'd love to do that. Maybe we can close with a meditation also at some point in the live if you would like to lead, or I'm happy to lead something too.
Sure.
I think give a shout out to all the folks tuning in. Let's see.
Yeah, welcome.
Leandra, RS Codes, the Skate Monk. Arjun's giving some love. It's flying. We got love bombs flying through the screen over here. Leticia, great to see you on here. Lileshwari, Vrinda, Nidhi, Satvika Yoga, Akash, and Parisa. Thank you for joining in.
I think something also important to name just as we go forward is that we're just sharing our personal experiences, right? We're not, necessarily experts in this particular field, but obviously both of us do have experience with this in our own personal lives, and then also just working with hundreds of people, with body work, with Ayurveda, with coaching, and just super necessary to start talking about it more and more. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the idea, right? It's like because Yamuna and I, we've got the opportunity to connect a lot more. Just recently, we're working on a couple projects together, and just having a safe space to start to open up. We all need it. Like life with a sacred space and a safe space to open up. It starts to give us like this a platform to share what's really going on inside. And which so often can feel like it's taboo to share it, or it's not okay to share it, or it's scary to share it, or we're going to be judged or left if we share it. And so
totally. So let's jump in. We had a few questions here, and I think it's a great progression, and I think the first question we wanted to just cover is really, what is your understanding of trauma from what you've learned, from what you've researched, and from just how you've come to understand it experientially?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so my experience of trauma, just personally in my life, is basically, it's experiences that I haven't digested. It's experiences that I have, just like a meal. We just got Om. Cooking with Om, just tuned in. And Om knows better than anybody. Amazing Ayurvedic chef. Okay, if I'm not digesting the food that I'm eating, then I'm going to be diseased. Physically, I'm going to be diseased. And so I recognize in my life at a certain point that there were certain things from my childhood, there were certain things from earlier on in my life that I didn't process. I didn't process them. And they were sitting inside of my psyche. They were sitting inside of my subconscious, just kind of like continuously coming up again and again and again, this undigested experience, just kind of putting false kind of truths into my mind, like that I'm not enough, or that there's something wrong with me, or whatever it may be, right? That it would just keep surfacing up. And so just in a really simple way, I could see trauma in my life as basically undigested experiences, or experiences that for whatever reason I wasn't able to process, when I was younger. And so they're sitting inside of my being, like creating tension, creating disharmony, creating disease, and subtle and more intense ways.
Yeah, I think it's important that you name that it's more of an experience and not a particular event. right? Because it's each of us has a certain capacity to digest these different experiences that are coming in through our sense organs, into our mind, into our lives. And you know, maybe some of us will define it as a particular event that happens, but really it's a feeling that of intensity. At least that's my particular understanding. And I've been listening to a lot of experts this week, and they're saying, yeah, a lot of people would think of trauma as an event, right, that happened to you, but really it's an experience that takes you out of yourself, that makes you feel unsafe. Just like, you know, even for instance, safety. Safety is not just the lack of, you know, imminent threat or imminent danger, but it's the experience of being comforted. It's the experience of being actually having connection. And so in the same way, it's in the same way for me, how I understand trauma is that it's not just the negative experiences that we've had, but also the lack of positive experiences, right? If you're anticipating some fundamental human need to be met as a child for your being provided for, being connected with, being respected, being loved, being fed, being nourished, being secure, right? All these like foundational things, if we're not experiencing those, that is also traumatic. It's not just something super negative and obvious that happens, but also can happen over time, you know? And most of the time we block out those memories. You know, our body, we'll get into this, I'm sure, a lot as we go on, but our body and mind have these incredible mechanisms to really shut down and forget those things that have happened, just to protect us. So
yeah, it's you know, as I'm hearing you talk about that, it's like as an experience instead of an event, and it's almost like what I'm hearing is like the way that we're experiencing
right,
the things that are happening in our life, you know,
right,
and like how is that if okay, you know, for me, for instance, like, you know, and I've done coaching and therapy and counseling and been able to come to some realizations in my own life, like around my father leaving when I was a little kid, and it's like, wow, like, you know, when I look back at like the story, it's like, oh, my dad left, yeah, he's still around, and it's like, but it's not like a traumatic event that I'm
right, right,
recalling. The way that I experienced my life from that point onward, and something, you know, just through excavating and kind of like really getting to like see like what's this darkness that I experience inside of myself, like what's going on,
right,
and it's like, oh yeah, okay, if the most important, arguably the most important person in my life leaves me, what does that say about me?
right,
You know, and as a young person, you know, I don't have any other capacity. I don't have another capacity to
exactly,
objectively experience what's happening, see what my mother and father are going through. I don't have that capacity. So then it must be something wrong with me. There must be something that's off. And then
right,
now I'm living my life 20 years, 30 years with that as the foundation.
exactly. I was gonna say that just, you know, obviously it becomes much more devastating when these things happen as a child, and your capacity to receive stressful experiences is not really developed. You don't have any tools, you don't have any techniques, you don't, you know, and then especially that becomes amplified more when it happens from your caregivers, right? The people who are supposed to basically be that facility for you of protection, of, you know, helping you understand the world. So it becomes extremely confusing. And, you know, this is something that I think pretty much everyone has experienced. That's my personal conviction, is like statistically, okay, 70% of people have experienced some sort of trauma, but really I think the other 30% just haven't found out yet because of that forgetfulness mechanism.
Yeah. The survival mechanism in some way, just like, yeah, like an experience being so painful that we never want to experience it again. And so,
Right.
you know, our psychology is expert at survival. And so, all right, like, let's just like put this file over there and, you know,
Totally.
shove it into the corner
Put it
over there.
behind the filing cabinet.
Totally. So in some way I can distance myself from that pain because you know, whatever experiences that we've had, you know, the undigested experiences that are too painful. We don't want to experience that pain. We're pleasure-seeking beings. We don't want to experience that pain. So such a good point. We have an inbuilt mechanism to forget them and just kind of push them, push them to the background.
Yeah, and that leads me to wanting to ask, because that forgetful mechanism activates. So then it's not really a visceral experience you're having on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, on a personal level, what is it that led you to start to wanting to learn more about this, starting to uncover more of this in your life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm super interested to hear what your answers to the same question. I mean, I guess that's the trap, and that's the trick of my mind, and I think we all experience this in different ways. Anyone that's had a traumatic experience in their life that hasn't digested and processed it is, yeah, it's kind of like there's a problem with me. Like I kind of just make it like I'm a defective, computer. Somehow or other I was born defective.
Right.
And so it becomes like this inbuilt, like I am the problem. And so there's almost like, for a lot of my life, it's like there wasn't the perspective. It was like the darkness, the depression, the anxiety, the negative thoughts, the negative spirals that I could find myself in. It was just like, I'm just broken.
Right.
Like it wasn't like, oh no, I have a disease or there's a sickness that's hitting me right now. It's like intrinsically I'm broken. And it wasn't until, I guess I just kind of, I looked at that enough. I looked at my own brokenness maybe enough, my own darkness enough. And I just kind of tried on, like, maybe there is a solution to the pain that I'm experiencing. Maybe there is a solution to the challenges I'm facing in my life. It was a little bit of inquiry that started to come in, instead of it just being like something that I've got to just deal with. I've got to deal with anxiety and depression. That's just all there is to it. I started to seek a little bit, and that led me to counseling. That led me to coaching and counseling, coaching, whatever you want to call it. If somebody's an effective space holder, they're going to support us to process our conditioning and reconnect to ourselves. And so in that space, that's where I started to see that actually it's like, no, there were hidden, uncovered, undigested experiences that I actually could go back and access, and that I could rewrite, and by experiencing those traumas with acceptance and not being ashamed of myself or the way that I feel, just actually being willing to go back into those experiences and to feel them and to process them, I started to experience like a tremendous amount of inner freedom. And so that really, and I remember it being maybe my first or second coaching session with a beautiful person, still a very important part of my life, that I started to then, recognize that actually there's a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be stuck in this experience of my trauma throughout the rest of my life. I could actually heal from this.
Right.
And that's what really started to lead me into starting to just explore every emotion, everything that was coming up in my life, whatever it was: anger, sadness, despair, hopelessness, whatever those feelings were, to start to really explore them with curiosity.
Right.
And to start to look at them not as enemies. I remember sitting in the Bhakti Center and finishing a coaching session and having this intense vision that my whole life I was running from like an axe murderer. I was like, there was this anxiety that I was living my life with, and I'm running through the streets of New York, and it's dark and it's scary, and I'm like that was the undercurrent of my life, and I didn't even realize it, And then at a certain point, it was like, oh, wait a minute, like, who am I running from? like who am I running from? And I remember stopping, and this is just like a visualization that's happening with my eyes closed. I stopped and I was like, who am I running from? Like, who is this person? And the person just ran up to me, and it was me wearing a hoodie, you know, and like the flashy thing that I thought was a knife was like the phone, and the person trying to call me, like, and it was like, no, I've been running from myself my whole life.
Right.
All the anxiety that I've ever felt in my life is just the unwillingness to sit with myself and be with myself and accept myself. It is the running, it is the avoidance that I've been basically, you know, I've been in that paradigm, you know. So that's, you know, that's really what led me to start to look at, you know, look at trauma in my own life, and to start to process it was somehow or other. Man, somehow or other, I feel like Krishna's grace, God's grace in my life, to just say, like, brother, there's another way. Like, you do not need to experience life this way, and just try it out. Like, go look for some help, work on it, try it out. And that was the start. And it's just been a beautiful journey ever since, of going deeper into it myself. Every day it's a journey, and supporting people, and starting to teach about it and support people and hold people in that same space too. I want to hear what your
I mean, you
reflections.
just threw down so many gold nuggets. I'm like trying to pick them all up and, you know, keep them as gems. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is that, I think also one thing you named that I'm also just recognizing in a big way is that all the coping mechanisms that I've built were here for me. You know, were here to serve me. And that it can become like, dealing with these sort of things can become way more difficult when you kind of see yourself as the criminal, as the prosecutioner, and as like the executioner all in one, right? Like, you are like, yeah, like this means something bad about me, and therefore I'm gonna feel shitty about myself, and I'm gonna beat myself up, and I'm gonna trash myself. So you're like, not only is it like, you know, you're dealing with the actual thing, and then you're coping with that thing, but then you're beating yourself up for coping with the thing, all in one packet. So it's like, what am I even dealing with at this point, you know? So it becomes, you know, for me, I feel like it was just a gradual chiseling away of all the layers of trash, you know, and like you're saying, like, ultimately it's me. Ultimately it's me, because we can practice forgiveness, and we can, you know, experience tremendous relief from that. But I think also an important part of my process is like, some of these things are not just changeable, right? I can't change a person. I can't change the past. The only thing I can change is my ability to let go. My ability to really forgive myself for holding on for so long when actually I was safe. When actually all these things were here as doorways, like you're saying, by Krishna's grace, into something deeper in my life. And I can resist that. I can resent that. I can run away from that. I can feel angry about that. All those things are valid, and all those things are true. But I think when it comes to really wanting to heal, it does require sitting in it. And letting yourself actually just experience it for the first time, and re-experience it, and re-experience it until you integrate it, right? Until it doesn't become this thing that just is like this automated algorithm running your life and making you make all these decisions and see the world as a negative place, and see people as trying to attack you, and see yourself as the victim in all scenarios. I know that's something that I have personally dealt with, and that you've helped me with tremendously when I joined the ashram. Is like, I made so many things, you know, a sob story for myself that didn't have to be.
Yeah.
And And it's the lens through which we see the world. It clouds that lens. And that lens is also a layer of truth, right? It's true because we make it true. It's true because we're operating off of the operating system of our childhood still. But then it's like, okay, I'm an adult now. Like, I'm safe. I'm good. I'm surrounding myself with people who love me, who care about me, who have my best interests in mind. And I think for me, that was a pivotal part of me learning more about myself, was having people around me who actually saw the good in me, saw the bad in me, saw the coping mechanisms and the escapism and the victimhood and all that, and still held that space for me. And still were like, we see you, we love you. And you were one of those people for me. So I feel incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah, I feel same. You've been one of those people for me, you know, and it comes in so many different packages in so many different ways. Little brothers, big brothers, mentors. You know, Arjuna's on here. I was just giving a shout out to Arjuna.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
early on, right in the beginning, is that, you know, we all need an Arjuna, right? We all
Totally.
need a person to be able to lay our head on their lap, lay our head on their shoulder, and cry to. We all need a person to be able to just let our heart, let it be seen. Let our mind be revealed. We all need that safe and sacred and vulnerable space. And what I'm hearing, you know, such a powerful thing that I'm hearing coming through what you're sharing is that, like, that willingness to trust, like that willingness to trust another person, that willingness to trust, you know, and that's really what I could see. It's like my relationship with God or a higher power, you know, so much. It's like the reality of my relationship with God, with a higher power, that's because I've had relationships with people like Arjun, like my brother, like a
Totally.
loving father, like a loving friend like yourself, like that started to make like this concept of a higher power, started to make it so personal and so real and so close and so intimate, so that I could start to trust that everything that's happening in my life, every single thing that's happening in my life, that there's meaning and purpose behind it. I can start to trust that. You know, there's some different analogies and images that came to mind, like as we're sharing about this, like I had that image of like anxiety being like I'm running from an axe murder, but really it was just myself, right? Or, you know, the types of like self-hatred that I've held other people in or held myself in. And I'm remembering, you know, a woman that I was holding space for, and we're being with this anger and this resentment and this hatred, and we're with this energy. And I'm like, what are you saying? Like, what image is coming to your mind? And she's starting to see like a little girl in the mud with her tattered dress and surrounded by like a barbed wire fence, you know, and like hating that person, like hating that, and then like starting to like have this vision of like I'm like, yeah, like how would you like what are you feeling toward this little girl, toward this little person? And then starting to feel this overwhelming compassion and love and like gentleness. And what is it? I mean, like the hundreds of examples of going into these stories, going into these imagery of like how we've seen ourselves and experienced ourselves as ugly, as shameful, as unlovable, as dangerous, as you know, unacceptable, as whatever those images may be, those visceral images may be, you know. And then when we really objectively look at ourselves, you know, or look at any human being that's in a downtrodden situation, or that's scared, or that's feeling, you know, afraid, or and anyone that we look at, and then we're going to say, like what's going to come from our higher self? Compassion, acceptance, love, shelter, gentleness. That's what's going to come, you know. And like you were saying early on, like we could be the executioner toward ourselves. We're judging ourselves. We're, you know, weighing ourselves. We could be so harsh with ourselves. We could be so harsh and so destructive toward ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Just
wanted to pause for a sec.
Please.
So many friends that are coming in. Adam Greenfeld, one of my dearest old friends from New York, and we got the Dharma Guide, one of our dear little brothers, Victoria.
Shay.
Welcome. Yeah.
Reed. So many beautiful people, man.
Ladini, my little sister here, and Alachua. Leela Vrindavan, your beloved,
Watching from the living room.
and an angel in our lives. Plenitude, Puerto Rico, such an amazing project down there in Puerto Rico. A beautiful eco village, self-sustainable eco village they're creating down there. I'm so grateful to tune in and connect with you guys online, and everybody that's tuning in. Super grateful to be with you.
Yeah, and if you're just tuning in, we're talking about when trauma arises. And so we've already kind of spoken about trauma from our perspective and what led us, we're just getting into kind of what led us to wanting to learn more. And hopefully by the end of this, we can receive some questions from you and some reflections, and then also just some tools for you guys to take home that have really helped us. Mm-hmm. Just one last thought on what you're saying, because I think it's really important here, is like you're saying, that lady that you were talking about who saw herself as this little girl who was all beat up and disheveled and worthless and, you know, scared, and all these things that each of us feels sometimes in our darker moments, or maybe on a regular basis. Like, that ability to go there and have compassion for that little girl, you know, or that little boy, be like, wow, you're completely lovable. You did the best you could. And that's awesome. And also recognizing that when we interact with other people who are hurtful, who are, you know, acting in compulsive ways and addictive ways and harmful ways, destructive ways, that is their little kid inside, most likely, that is feeling hurt. The only time we act out in that way is a desperate cry for our needs to be met, a desperate cry for our basic humanity to be recognized and to be nourished. And that's when all these negative things come out, is when those things are really violated, or when those things just go too long without being positively invested in, positively met by the people around us. And I love what you're saying of just having people in our lives that can allow us to understand that we're being taken care of, that we're allowed to cry, we're allowed to go through all the shit, you know, that's like piled onto us, and that we're completely lovable and loving, and that doesn't take away anything from us to go there. Really, we can talk about this maybe in a moment, but it is, you know, the later part of our lives, like, what opportunities does trauma allow us in our lives? And I think one of those things is intimacy, that we're touching on here in a deep way. Did you have any other thoughts? Because there's one or two more things I was just thinking quickly here about what led me to wanting to learn more about trauma. Did you have anything else here?
I'd love to hear from you, and I think just, you know, kind of closing just this little section of what we're talking about right now, just one more, just kind of clarification and kind of bringing it together in the sense of, if we can't be that compassionate person for ourselves, and I am challenged to be that compassionate person for myself at times in my life, for sure. If we can't be that for ourselves, that's Sangha, that's mentorship, that's counseling, that's what it's there for.
Right.
In my life where I have struggled to have that self-compassion, to see that little boy, to see that part of myself that's hurting, with love, with compassion, with gentleness. Yeah, let's put ourselves in the company of somebody who it's easy for them to see us in that way.
We're not meant to do it alone.
No.
We're not meant, we're social creatures. We need to co-regulate our nervous systems. We need to laugh together. We need to have connection together. Like I was saying, the feeling of safety is not just the lack of harm, but really the presence of real connection. The last thing I wanted to just say here before we move on is, I think something else that both of us have experienced, and that really led me to wanting to learn more about this, is understanding that everything in my body is telling a story. Right, and we know this, you know, I got to study Marma therapy from you and from our guru in India, and We got to learn so many different things through Ayurveda, and there's a whole science of reading the face in Ayurveda, reading the palms, reading the tongue. Everything is a microcosm of the macrocosm, and that includes the greater picture of our story. It's all stored in there. It's all stored in the way that we sit, the way that we move our bodies, the way that we walk, the way that we talk, the way that our tone of voice is. Everything is a reflection of what's going on inside. And so I think through, Marma therapy, through starting to give a lot of people body work and then experiencing it myself, giving my own self body work and self-healing, realizing, wow, pretty much every person is going through this. Pretty much every person has some deep stuff stored in there. And I think Marma made that super obvious to me, because it was like, hey, press a few acupressure buttons on someone's body and they're bawling their eyes out. I'm like, what's going on here? It's like, that's stored in there. It's like you were saying in the beginning, it's an undigested experience. That's what stress is. That's what trauma is. And our body stores it. Our body captures it, puts it in a little ball, and tucks it away. But we can unlock those things. And so I think for me, it was like chiseling away through my own self-healing process, helping people heal, realizing, oh my God, like even the people who seem the most well put together, no matter what the outward facing persona is, whether that person's like disheveled and like destructive, whether that person's like, I have everything together, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's something in there.
Yeah.
Not to be too intense, but yeah, there's something in there for all of us that is another layer of healing for us. So that also really was eye-opening for me. Yeah. All right, so just pivoting a little bit to our last section here, and then we can take some questions after. So if you guys are having some questions, please put them in now so we can have them here. But really what I want to ask you is, how can we identify when trauma is being triggered in our lives? What are the ways we can begin to understand that? Because as we were saying in the beginning, the mind has an incredible forgetfulness mechanism that goes on, and coping mechanisms that go on, that sometimes don't make it super obvious that we're having a triggering traumatic response to life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the ways that I experience it, obviously there's the telltale signs. If we're experiencing anxiety consistently in our life, if we're experiencing, the fear and like trepidation toward the future, that there in somehow, some way, we're living in that fear and that anxiety. This is a telltale sign that we're living through the triggers of our trauma. Or if we're feeling worthlessness, we're feeling stuck, feeling depression, we're feeling like, a lack of meaning, a lack of personal value and worth intrinsically, just as we are as human beings. It's a sign of trauma. These are two of the biggest ways that I've experienced, and I would say the third is anger. If little or big things are creating an uncontrolled response of frustration and anger, then this is a sign and a symptom that there's something deeper that's being stirred in the pot. I could go on and on. There's so many.
I think that's a great start. And like
survival strategies that I've played that were symptoms of my trauma, or symptoms of the stories and the experiences that were undigested. These are some of the main ones emotionally. And I feel like it's emotions oftentimes that we're going to catch more than the thoughts and the stories in our mind, because the mind's so tricky. But feelings, none of us can avoid, none of us can hide from feeling sad, anxious. We can try, sure, there's mechanisms to distract ourselves, but we come right back to those feelings again and again. And so
I like laugh while you talk, because we've talked about this stuff so many times in the past, and just it's helpful to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Just like, wow. So a few great points there. I think one thing is just on a physiological level, Our heartbeat always tells us what's going on, right? A lot of people, it's like, you know, the number one killer in America is heart disease, some malfunction of our heart, and most of that's completely preventable. Of course, there's so many factors in that, but really the heart beats in one way when it's experiencing safety and experiencing love and acceptance, and another way when it's feels like it's being marginalized, or when it's unstable or unsafe. And so if we haven't experienced what it's like to have a down regulated nervous system and heartbeat, then we don't really have a reference point for what normal feels like, what healthy feels like. And I think that's most of us, we're living in a chronic state of stress, in a chronic state of like fight or flight or freeze. And that's another thing, is like our nervous system, it's biologically wired to have a particular capacity. And when that capacity is met, or maxed out, then literally our brain functions begin to turn off. Our brain functions, our higher cognitive functions are like, you need to survive.
Yes, yes.
Like, homie, you need to survive. But the thing is, you know, when these traumatic experiences happened, maybe that was quite some time ago, and now your trauma experience is still stored in your nervous system, and you're triggering, you know, your nervous system to be maxed out by things that are not inherently dangerous or negative or trying to attack you or harm you, but it's just association from the past, and your higher cognitive functions begin to turn off. So I think, you know, and then also just on a bodily platform, our body's telling us so much when it's shaking, when it's trembling, when we become really cold.
Hands, and then
Yeah.
Over, excessively perspiring or something.
Totally. Yeah. Like if you begin to become really hot and sweat, or if you become really cold in a room and you're like, other people are like, no, like I'm good, I'm chilling, you know, and you're like, I'm really chilling, you know, like you become, or tears, or, you know, withdrawing or hiding, you know, or clenching. Like I see a lot of people, and I've called you out on this in the past too, you know, the jaw thing, the clenching of the jaw. You know, most people, when I'm trying to give them body work and stuff, I'm like, hey, you know, I'm trying to move their arm or move their leg, and I'm like, you know, you can let go, you know, I got you. And they just literally don't know how to let go.
Yes.
You can give them the verbal cue, relax your leg. They're like, it's relaxed. I'm like, it is completely stiff, my friend. You know? But one of the ways we can do that is by allowing the jaw to separate, right? You've taught me this, and so many others, that because it's one of the places where we store tension and kind of anger and conflict, is like gritting the teeth, you know? It's like almost like a primal, like, you know, kind of animalistic defense kind of thing. So all those things, fidgeting, nervousness, and then I think the second thing I just want to name is like the social mechanisms, which you've spoken on these too. But when we feel unsafe, like I was saying, our greater capacity for self-expression is really stunted, right? And when that happens, I've experienced this in my life. Like, okay, I feel nervous in a social situation, or where the power dynamic is unclear, or wherever it is, and I'll just play out my script, right? This is how I talk about things, and this is who I am, and this is my normal response to those things. But it's not me actually being able to be present with you, or me being able to be present with the situation. It's just like my body's nervous system's maxed out. I may not even know that. I probably don't even know that. And unconsciously, I just run on the automatic script I'm used to running.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something we can begin to just intuit and understand. Am I running on autopilot, or do I feel like I can actually be intimate in this situation, be vulnerable in this situation?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so many You know, this is something really, it's kind of like one of those homeworks for us. You know, it's like one of the tools is like, okay, where am I identifying it? And if it's all the time, that's okay. You know, Arjun, great. He's suggesting copaiba, you know, an amazing nervous system tonic, you know, to help calm and bring us into a grounded state of being. It's like anywhere that we're feeling in our life, like disconnected, disjointed, like something's wrong or something's off, or and you know, maybe we felt that way the majority of our life. Okay, like we're naming it now. Like we're starting to name it. We're starting to kind of look at that and just see the symptoms of trauma, of our conditioning playing out. And so I love, and you know, the limitless ways that that can play out. I was sharing a story with you just, you know, briefly. I was at a party in Los Angeles, and I was invited by the host, and I didn't know anybody there. And man, you know, like when most people see me in a social setting, they're like, man, this guy's like always bright and positive and like super social, always like a butterfly, is connecting with everybody. But man, there are times where I've walked into a social setting and I have felt such trepidation and fear that my inner world, it's like there's a 9 earthquake happening inside. I'm shaking, you know? And like, I don't even know why. I just am like, I am anxious. I'm afraid. I'm, you know, somehow or other that I don't belong, or like that I'm not going to be able to, whatever it is, right? It's not even logical.
Yeah, right. It's not cognitive. It's not.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So whatever those circumstances are, you know, we're going on a date, we're going to meet somebody for the first time, we're going for a job interview, we're noticing that tension, that fear, you know, we're noticing those things starting to come up, we're noticing those emotions coming up. Then like, how can we start to, okay, we're becoming a little aware that trauma is being triggered, and then what are some things that we can start to do? What are some things that we can start to implement in those circumstances to help self-regulate?
Yeah, I think it's important that, like, we'll get to that just in a second. I think it's important what you're mentioning of just like sharing your experience, because it can seem so embarrassing and like, well, nobody else is reacting like this to this normal everyday situation. Seemingly like these people are having a good time, you know, and like what's wrong with me? But understanding it's a tremendously normal experience. Yeah. It's extremely common. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will resist it happening in their lives, but really it's a symptom that you're ready to heal. Yeah. It's a symptom that you've opened up that doorway and your body is beginning the process for you. Mm-hmm. You know, myself, like, I'll just tell very briefly, and I want to do this as part of my process, is when I first learned that I had trauma in my life, it was a complete shock to me. I was just like, I told you this story before, but I was just driving to school in my university in Florida, and literally just, you know, listening to some kirtan, some mantra music, whatever it is. I was probably 20 years old or so. And all of a sudden, my body just starts to shake uncontrollably, like uncontrollably. And I have these kind of flashbacks of particular memories and things that happened that I had completely forgotten about. And I just started crying uncontrollably. And I had to like pull over and like Google, like, define this word, define that word. Oh my God, like that's what happened? Oh wow. I didn't even know that it happened until I was 20 years old. And when I was telling a mentor about it, literally my whole body was just shaking uncontrollably. And I had never experienced something like that in my life. It was there in my body. It happened, you know, so long ago, but I hadn't experienced it yet. But what I see when we speak about, you know, how can we identify these things being triggered, is that actually it's a positive sign. And when we begin to understand how to, which is our next question, our last little section here, how to understand these things as opportunities to heal.
Mm-hmm.
as opportunities to build connection, to build intimacy. And yeah, I'd love for you to kick that off. And
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just I'm gonna keep giving some shout outs. Gopika Devika, thanks for being with us. And we got Jay Kancham just tuned in. Theo, our dear brother from New York. Koshabi, Drista Govinda, dear brother from Colorado. Jim, thank you for all the love you're showing, staying engaged with us in our June. Same. It's Anushka, Sonvara, Chandler, Jesse, awesome to be with you. And so many of you guys are tuned in. I got some of your questions also. A few questions came in, so I wrote them down while Yamuna was sharing earlier. So we're
I'm
gonna come
not
right to
seeing
those
any of
questions.
that. I'm not, for some reason, my Instagram's not showing anybody who's joining. I don't see
Okay.
who's on here, and I don't see any of the comments or questions.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can moderate that.
Okay, cool. I got it. Yeah, I got you.
Cool.
Yogi T, welcome. Behaving himself. Keep behaving yourself. Thank you. That's exactly what we're talking about. So yeah. Okay. Some practical things. I'd say, coming back to it, I think we could overlook it really easily. Is, I think men need men, women need women. We need each other for sure. I was sharing that my story yesterday. I'm in 2 men's groups. I share vulnerably in those men's groups. Once a week I'm connecting with both of these groups, and so there's a safe space. I connect with my brother once a week. I connect with my godfather often. I connect with people like you regularly. I have a coach that I see every couple weeks, and like, so I built in mentorship. I built in friendships that are based on vulnerability, that are based on the honest revelation of my mind and my heart and the exploration of what's going on in my inner landscape. So this is first and foremost. Everything else is built from there. Everything else is a practice that then, so many of those practices are going to be self-realized. They're going to be suggested. They're going to come once we're in that space. Join a group, get a coach, get a counselor if you're struggling with your trauma. So these are some foundations that I'd say are a starting point. And then, practices for yourself. One practice that I really look at again and again, and I come back to again and again and again in my life, and it's been so powerful and so transformative for me, is anytime that I'm feeling stress or I'm feeling these symptoms of trauma arising, is to give myself the opportunity to pause. And even if it's for a very short period of time, even if it's for 30 seconds, I'm going to a meeting or I'm getting on a phone call or whatever it may be that's coming up in my life, even if it's for a very short period of time, to pause and to acknowledge my experience. I'm feeling nervous right now. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling tension in my body. Like, to just name my experience, to give a voice to it, and by doing so, unpack it a little bit, like to free and to liberate myself from whatever tension, whatever trauma is arising. Like you said, Yamuna, like, it's arising because it's ready to heal. It's arising because it's ready for us to transform it, to digest it, to process it. That's why it's triggered. That's why it's coming up. And so even if it's for a short period of time, and if we have more time, great. But to give ourselves this opportunity, if it's anger, if it's fear, if it's anxiety, if it's feeling stuck, whatever it is, I'm going to name what I'm experiencing without judgment. I'm going to name it
Right.
with acceptance. It just is. It's a part of my experience. I'm trusting that a healing is taking place right now. That's what's taking place right now. A healing is happening. I'm breathing. I'm feeling the emotion. I'm feeling the tension in my body. I'm naming it with my words. And I'm going through that. If I'm with it for 30 seconds, amazing. If I'm with it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, even more amazing. Whatever it takes to help just to bring us back into a present and grounded state of being. And so that's been one of the practices. That's a go-to. That's something that I do oftentimes, anytime I'm feeling any type of intense emotion coming back again and again, I go lay down on the earth and go through that process, or lay down on the ground and go through that process, or sit in meditation and go through that process. And it's been so liberating and so powerful.
just revolutionary, right? Like just giving ourselves permission to actually experience our experience. Because I feel like, you know, I've just also learned this in the last few years, and it's been absolutely revolutionary for me. Because I think when these things come up, we're like we've said so many times in this podcast or in this live, like, what is wrong with me? You know, why am I experiencing this? I shouldn't be experiencing this, because we have certain expectations for ourselves. And right now, this trauma that's coming up, this nervousness, this fear, this whatever it is not meeting my expectation for myself. And therefore, I'm at war with reality. Reality's wrong. I need to suppress this. I need to press it down. And when we make reality wrong, it exacerbates that stress way more. Like I can literally fight that emotion and that feeling all day or all week or all my life. Yes. Or like you're saying, I could literally take 20 seconds, and that's been profound for me, 20 seconds to just experience it and to just tap in and to just let go and to not have it be a reflection of my value as a human being or as a commentary on my character, but just it is what it is. And it's here for me to heal, and it's here for me to let go. And that has been, you know, absolutely profound. And that's what any of these healing practices are meant for us to access, a state of presence, a state of being able to let go. You know, whether that's through manipulating the physical body, through yoga, through marma therapy, through getting massage, through getting stretched, through getting walked on, through pressing acupressure, vital points in the body. It starts to stir up those energies, and then through our breath, through our mind, through our presence, we can actually just experience them, maybe for the first time ever. And then also, like you're saying, to have a community that's built on particular values of actually allowing you to go there, allowing you to be as you are with all of your self there, not just your inspired side, not just your persona. You know, many people that are super successful deal with complete crippling anxiety and sadness and depression from having to upkeep that image and not being allowed to have their experience that seemingly detracts from their status. But I say we need to build a culture and community in which your willingness to go there increases your status.
Yeah.
Right? And not in like a hierarchical, like I'm better than you, just like for yourself and for the community, right? Your willingness to go there helps other people go there. Mm-hmm. You know, and the men's sangha, the men's community has been pivotal for me, having guys that are actually living what they say they want to live, living their ideals, and have my best interest in mind. And I can trust that with every fiber of my being, and have them lift me up, have them be a shoulder to cry on, have them be someone who can call me out when I act out in lower ways, and they can pull me up and be like, hey, what's up? You know, I see you're hurt here. You know, I see what's going on here. Let's work on it together. Yeah. And that, you know, I don't think I could have done that alone. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, and for me, I'm not saying I'm healed or I'm there at the end destination, but so much has shifted in the past 5 years, 6 years since I've had that community. Mm-hmm. And since I've allowed myself to go there, and since I've had these practices of body work and being present and having coaches, basically building an ecosystem that is conducive to my healing and to everybody's healing, right? So I find, just last thing I'll say here is like meeting people where they're at in their healing process. That's going to increase the intimacy in our relationships and expressing our needs in relationships, because a lot of the times, because of the trauma or experiences we've had, whatever our needs may be may seem irrational to us, right? Like, why can't I just be intimate like other people can? Why can't I accept a hug like other people can? Why can't I accept critical feedback like other people can? Like basic stuff that we may have some resistance or traumatic response to, naming that, being like, hey, you know, sometimes this happens for me. Sometimes my body begins to shake. Sometimes I become fearful. Sometimes I really clench and resist when I'm in an experience like this. And if that person is meant to be an intimate part of your life, they will understand that it's not about them, but it's about your own healing process, and that you're inviting them a step closer into your heart. You're inviting them into another chamber of your heart that calls for increased sensitivity, increased connectivity, increased intentionality. And that's beautiful, right? Like we could, you know, not expressing that and being hurt by all these normal everyday situations, that's hurtful. But what's even more hurtful is faking it and repressing it and never having your needs truly met, never actually communicating what your heart and what your body are actually asking of you.
So beautiful, Yamuna. Yeah, I feel like I could listen to you and just hear you continue sharing. I feel like you're casting a beautiful vision for the community that I feel with you, and I have the great fortune to feel with other men in my life and friends in my life and my wife and Godfather and family, and like, and I also, it's like I want this for every human being.
Totally.
Like I want this quality of community, this quality of vulnerability, this quality of being held, and really, like, you know, what I could see, it's like us being instruments of God's unconditional love for each other in our lives. You know, like that quality of relationship is available to our dear sister Shama, who's held that space for me so many times and held that space for so many hundreds and thousands of people throughout her life.
Totally.
That's what we're looking for, you know, to be that for other people, and to be able to receive that, right? To be able to receive that in our relationships. And so I feel like you're casting a beautiful vision, a vision that I feel committed to, you know, doing my part, just being a little part of helping manifest that vision for more and more people in this world to feel held in that quality of community. And just super grateful to be on here with you. Super, super grateful.
I feel the same. I'm like, man,
my brother,
the most valuable thing in the world.
Yes,
being with you.
Yes, and you know what? I want to touch on this because we know we're trying to be men of our word, and we wanted to connect to some of these questions. There's some really beautiful questions that came out, and
please,
and also, you know, we'll close up in a few minutes, and so okay, so this you know, forgive me, but I didn't write the names down. I just wrote the questions down real quick, and
good.
They're way out there. Yeah. But you know who you are. You asked this question, and they're relevant for all of us. What if you don't remember? You know, and this kind of came in a couple ways. This came from two people. What if you don't remember? What if it's blurry and it's forgotten? You know, you're aware, like, yeah, there's some trauma. Yeah, I'm having the symptoms of trauma, but I don't really remember what happened. It's blurry. I've forgotten it. You know, how do I reconnect to that trauma, and how do I process it? And that's a question that came through, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, you know, my own personal opinion is you don't have to. You don't have to remember. What you're meant to remember will come up in the process as you open to it, and you don't need to force some, you know, regression therapy or, you know, so to go back in time and remember everything that happened. For me, it's like, I trust that whatever, you know, Krishna in the Gita, he says, I am remembrance, I am forgetfulness. Whatever I'm supposed to forget, I'm going to forget. Whatever I'm supposed to remember, I'm going to remember. And I've had things come up, you know, as we kind of explore the subconscious. Like, for instance, yoga nidra has been an incredible practice for me. Marma therapy has been an incredible practice for me. Coaching has been an incredible practice for me. And all of those things are also mechanisms to unlock the memories that are supposed to be unlocked, that are ready for you to access right now.
Mhm.
So I think, just trusting your process of healing and letting go, and also understanding on a little bit deeper level, intuitive level, what is it that's triggering you in this particular situation. So you can maybe begin to draw some parallels. Okay, when I'm in this situation with people I don't know, or when I'm in this situation, I have to be in front of a bunch of people. When I'm in this situation and there's uncertainty, then it triggers this response, right? And we can ask ourselves, what was uncertain in my childhood? What was uncertain in the past? Where did I feel like this before? Right? And use that feeling as a marker, like a little indicator light that we can go back in time. When else did I feel like this?
Mhm.
And it's pretty clear for me, but I mean, I've been doing this for some time, but yeah, that's my initial response.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Yamuna. And I think it's super important. And there was a lot of response also to, yeah, if we're meant to remember it, we're going to remember it. And just being in the process, like you're saying, okay, I'm feeling trauma's getting triggered. I'm feeling these emotions, intense emotions coming up. Being with those intense emotions, and maybe we're looking back. Maybe we're looking back, and maybe something comes, maybe something doesn't. But just being with those intense emotions without judgment, with acceptance, there's a lot of processing, a lot of transformation. There's a lot more inner freedom we're going to start to experience. Next time that emotion comes, it's not the enemy anymore. Next time that emotion arises, it's a gateway for us to be able to breathe and to lay down and do yoga nidra, and be with that experience and process it, and heal and become free and become liberated. Amazing. Okay, so we had there were a couple other questions that came in. We had, okay. Um, Okay, how do we know that we have forgiven somebody that has caused, trauma or hurt to us in our life, that have mistreated us, that we've been maybe a victim to somebody? How do we know that we've forgiven them?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm like, I want to know the answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Some
but I think,
immediate thoughts that came. I know also sometimes I get put on the spot, but maybe this will trigger it. There were some immediate thoughts that came to me because I've gone through a lot of processes of forgiveness for different people in my life. Is that I'm not withholding love.
yeah, right.
Like one of the things that I remember was like, okay, for like 10 years I had it, like, or for many years I had it written down. Call dad. It was like many years I had it written down. I never called him. I was like, okay, I'm withholding love. Like I haven't forgiven this
Right.
person.
Exactly.
That's why I don't call him. Or like, yeah, with my mom, like for so long, like I never call her, never call her. It's like, okay, yeah, like there's something there. There's a barrier between us. There's something unprocessed, undigested. There's a wall between us. And so, okay, I can know I haven't forgiven somebody to the degree that I'm unwilling, consciously or unconsciously, to just express love to them in my life. And if they're an important person, a sibling, a family member, a mother, a father, I'm not saying we have to have intimate relationships with all these people, but
Yeah,
there's an indicator. If I'm unwilling to express love toward that individual, there's going to be an indicator that I'm withholding forgiveness and I'm withholding healing them.
yeah, that was perfect. That was also, kind of the um, inverse to my initial thought, which was if you still have contempt for that person, if you still have resentment for that person, if you're not wishing that person well, if you're not able to, um, yeah.
Yeah.
And something that's been super helpful is reading the book Radical Forgiveness. So just drop that as a little resource as well. Radical Forgiveness.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. And then the last one that came in is, I'm experiencing strong, this came from Mila. I'm experiencing strong, intense emotions in my meditation. Is this a sign or a symptom of trauma coming up and healing taking place?
Yeah, I mean, any emotion that's coming up is an expression of something inside of us, right? And yoga and meditation, all those things are manipulating that energy, stirring that energy, and ultimately trying to process whatever that energy is. And if we're having, you know, a lot of emotional swings or kind of unsteady emotional experiences, then it is a trigger that there's some sort of thing happening. There's something we're processing. There's an ongoing process of healing going on. And it, again, it doesn't mean anything about your character or your value or anything like that, but rather, okay, still something going on here. When we're in a healthy place, it's like we become able to process the experiences around us. Like we get a particular armor and processing mechanisms of the world so that even when real intense things happen, we're able to move through it. We're able to integrate it. So, but that takes time, and that's what a lot of these processes are super helpful for. And now research is finding yoga meditation as some of the top things that can help people with trauma.
Awesome, Yamuna. Yeah, and kind of hearing that, like that's like, yes, like it's confirmation. Like anywhere where there's emotion arising, if we're willing to be with it in a meditative state and observe and see it, then yes, that's a sign and a symptom of trauma from the past, a trigger from the past arising, and an opportunity for us to process it. And
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, Bubba. Okay, those were the questions that came in. We
Okay.
had one more. How do you let go? Okay. This is one that's asked so often. How do we let go? And immediately speak, I'm thinking of Srila Prabhupada. He gave us the best strategy for how to let go is to grab on. So if I'm trying to let go of enmity towards somebody, then I'm grabbing on to forgiveness toward that person. I'm grabbing on to, to love toward that person, to in some way seeing that person and appreciating that person, whatever it may be. So if I'm trying to let go of fear, I'm grabbing on to surrender. If I'm trying to let go of anger, I'm grabbing onto patience, and I'm grabbing onto, my clarity. So it's like, kind of, what is it that you're trying to let go of? And instead of focusing on the negative of that, is like grab onto like what you want to experience in that situation. Grab onto that and let that be what you focus on.
Yeah, and I think also something important to name is like we shouldn't make our letting go contingent upon some external situation changing.
Yeah.
But rather it's that internal process, right? It's like, well, if this person that I'm in conflict with like finally gets their act together and changes, then I'll be good. Right? As long as we do that, we're gonna like set ourselves potentially up for like massive hurt over and over and over again. Right? It's like, oh no, like this time it's different. This time, So really the process is like twofold. One is between you and the situation, whatever happened, that person, and forgiving that person, whatever, but then also just letting go for your own sake, for your own health. Is this serving me to hold on? Right? Like maybe there's some injustice, can't change that injustice, can't change that person. It's great if they do change, but I can change my willingness to let go of what's not serving me. And of course, that's a process. It's not just a one and done thing, but like Vera was saying, just a repeated grabbing of the positive alternatives in life and engaging with the positive aspects of life that actually bring us healing, actually bring us closer to connection, intimacy, all those things that we actually do want.
Awesome, Yamuna. Yeah, so much goodness coming from you, bro. Super, super grateful just to hear you sharing, to get the opportunity to share, to be with everybody that's tuned in, that stayed with us. Some of you guys stayed with us throughout this whole conversation. We've been together for over an hour, and some of you guys have tuned in and had to tune out. Just super grateful for your attention. Your attention is of greatest and utmost importance and value. And so the time and energy that you're giving to be with this dialogue and with this conversation, be with us today, is I hope it's been enriching for you. And Yamuna and I, what we're hoping to do, without over promising anything, is we're just hoping to be in dialogue around these topics more consistently, and to open up and be vulnerable in our own lives, to share our experiences, and to connect with you guys more and more on a regular basis. And we have a specific offering that's coming up. You can see more about that. We posted about it on our pages, but specifically geared toward men that we've been connecting with over the years, and men that have been connecting with us. And wanting to provide that safe space for them. And obviously, for ladies as well, we have different programs where we provide that space, that sacred space for healing to take place. And really just to go deeper into community, go deeper into the wisdom that's available to help us to live our life to the fullest. And we want that for ourselves. We want that for you. We want that for our whole community. And
y'all invited.
Everybody's
we
invited.
the net. We open the arms.
Yes. Yeah.
We all need it. So thank you so much, Vera, for being an angel in my life, for being an angel in hundreds and hundreds of people's lives, and just being willing, to go through your own healing process and just be honest, be authentic, and help us also have heroes to look up to that are also going through their own healing process. I think that's super inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Jai, for tuning in, always supporting me, supporting us in our lives. Amazing community builder, and Shabnam for being with us the whole time. Chuck, great to be with you. If you're just tuning in now and you want to see the whole video, it will be posted on both of our pages, so you can go back and watch the whole recording. Yeah. And
please save it to your phone.
I will.
Save
yeah.
It so we have the file. All right. Thank you all.
Be well in all ways, and we'll see you soon. Hare Om.